How's it going, everybody? It's AfroDJMac, and I'm really excited to show you the classical guitar instrument. It's an Ableton live instrument made out of samples of my nylon string classical guitar. And my goal was to create something as realistic as possible. And I've always kind of felt a little frustrated with any like sample-based or synthesized guitar sounds because they're just not really that real sounding. And I think this is a really nice representation of what you can do, and I'm happy to share it with you right now. So what you're hearing right now is the first of two instruments, the classical guitar instrument, and what I'm going to start doing now is adding in some of the other instrument, which is the reversed classical guitar, which you're going to start hearing coming in real slow in the background. As I like play these notes, they start out really slow and quiet, but they come in and have this really cool reversed trippy sound. So let's talk a little bit about the classical guitar instruments here. And there's our reverses coming in. So first thing you should probably know is that this is made up of over exactly 250 samples, 225 notes, and 25 finger noises to give you a little bit of realism. You'll notice as I lift my hand off the pads, I occasionally get some finger noise. So let's talk about how this works. I'm going to open it up so you can see what's going on inside. We've got our rack here, and inside we've got a whole collection of other stuff, other racks. So as I go in here, this instrument is actually 4 chains or 4 different layers of instruments. I've got classical guitar at low velocity, so when you play really quiet and soft, you get these nice soft notes. And you can see the velocity marker showing up where I'm playing. As I play a little bit harder, we start getting into the middle velocities. And as I play really hard, these louder, more plucked sounds. So you get a lot of different expression on this. You can play nice and soft and get like some louder notes. Depending on how hard you hit. And the fourth layer is our finger noises. So let's just look at what's going on inside each one of these layers. So now inside, say, my low velocity, what I've got are samples for every note from E1 all the way to A. So it's basically the low E on the classical guitar and all the way up to the A, which is this note, which is about as high as you can get on my guitar. Now, what I've done is I've got 3 samples for each note. So when I play my E, I've got this random setup so that you'll get one of these 3 samples at the low velocity. So it never quite sounds the same. I'll put on the repeat so you can kind of hear this. So I'm repeating at a low velocity, which we can see over here. But we're always getting a different sample. It never plays the same. As I press a little bit harder, we get the middle velocities, and you notice they do sound different. They're not the same note over the same exact sample all the time. And then when I press harder, you can hear the difference in the individual notes. So what that means is you've got on the low velocity, you can play by 3 different notes, on the medium velocity 3 different notes, and on the high velocity 3 different notes. That means every time you play a note, you can get one of 9 samples playing back depending on how hard you press your keys and a little bit of randomness. Just like a real guitar, anytime you strum or pluck a string on a guitar, it's going to sound slightly different, and that's what I'm trying to emulate here. So I got the repeat function going there. Now, the other thing that makes this interesting is my finger noise. So I've got 25 samples of finger noises. Now, if I just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my actual notes and just let you hear what the finger noises sound like. And they're just kind of playing back at random. And we can go into our actual synth here, our actual macros, and control exactly how often the finger noise happens. So if I crank this all the way up, we'll get a finger noise basically every time I lift my finger off a note, more or less. There's some randomness to this. I can also turn up the finger noise so you can hear it a little more. And I can lower it in the mix too if I like. I'm going to keep it at 0. If I bring this dial all the way down to 1, we'll never get any finger noise. It'll never happen. So if you don't want any finger noise, you can take that away. I kind of like it at about 7. I feel like that's a nice compromise. You're always going to get some finger noise when you're playing a guitar, when you're recording it. So this is part of what makes this instrument sound kind of real. So let me close down this now that we've seen what's really the meat of this rack right here in this classical guitar. I've filtered out the low frequencies. Everything below 80 Hertz right here is being cut. And that's because the low E on a guitar is 80 Hertz. So anything below that is really just low noise rumble. Let me just turn back on my chains here. So we don't want to hear that anyway, and that'll just clean up our mix a little bit. But we still get those nice low notes of the E string. So let's go to our rack here. Our first control is dynamics. And that's basically your volume to velocity. So if I turn this all the way up, I can get these really quiet notes and these really loud notes. Now that's probably a little bit extreme, so I've got this set at a default at 35, but if you bring it down to 0, you're going to get less dynamics between your quiet and your loud notes. You'll still get the different samples playing, but you don't get the same dynamics. I liked 35, I think was a nice. I think that's a nice balance. You've got control of the release time. This particular instrument can be a lot of fun to play with a sustain pedal, but if you don't have one, you can have some release on your notes by turning up the knob. And I got it set at 4 seconds by default. You can turn it down to nothing, and you'll get these like really abrupt cutoffs, or you can crank it up so that your notes will basically ring out for the entire length of the sample, which is as long as a guitar string can really ring out. I let all these notes ring out for as long as they would last. So that's almost like I'm holding my fingers down on the fretboard. But again, I kind of like about 4 seconds here, so I can hold it down when I want, let go, and there's sort of a natural decay. On top of that, we've got a tone control, and you can see on our EQ what that's doing. The tone is essentially just giving us a little bit more high end or a little less high end. So you can hear there's a little bit of room noise on these samples. Classical guitar is a really quiet instrument in a lot of ways. I'm trying to pick up on the subtleties, so you will hear some room noise. If you're not too happy with that and you want to take that away, just turn down your tone a little bit. But again, I like it to be kind of natural, so I've got it set to 64 as your middle point. We've just talked about the finger noise, but again, I can turn this up so you can hear it more in context. This is kind of a person with a noisy left hand on their guitar. And if I bring this all the way down to 0 or 1, this is somebody that makes 0 noise, and that's kind of not that realistic. Again, I like about 7, and you can mix this in how you like. If you just want something quiet, do something like that. I kind of like the default at about 0. Finally, we've got a reverb. I prefer subtle myself. This is a bit extreme for me. You can turn this all the way off and get a really pure classical guitar sound. I like just a little bit though to kind of simulate maybe like a concert hall. And you get control over the reverb time. Something nice and long. Almost like a special effect there. And also the room size. But again, I want to keep this sounding natural. So we're going to have a small room with a small amount of reverb. Just a couple percent. Another cool feature of this instrument is I've set it up so that when you use aftertouch, you get a bit of vibrato. So I can just play a note and it holds its pitch steady. But if I start applying pressure, you'll hear the pitch move a little. So this simulates the left hand on the fingerboard just moving and pulling the string a little bit. It's a very common technique in guitar playing. On the next track, the other instrument is more or less the same thing, except it's reversed. So we've got these reversed sounds which come in a kind of haunting way. Just let these kind of come in. And on this one, you'll notice I've got the release time all the way up to 60 seconds so that the entire sample can play, so that we get the initial attack in reverse, which sounds more like a cutoff. Like the sound is just cuts off. And I've got the reverb cranked pretty high on this too. And this is a case where I think you can get away with some really long reverb tails. You got your same tone, you got your finger noise sounds. The finger noises are kind of interesting on the reverse because they happen before the notes actually come in, which is kind of a cool effect. So there you have it, folks. This is the classical guitar instrument. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Like I said, I'm really thrilled with how it came out. It's just a testament to the power of sampling and what you can do inside a Live. And this is one of the deepest single instruments I've ever made. And I think the results are pretty convincing. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care.